Thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to call us to order at 6:02. And Liz, if you're able to, I sent you a copy of the agenda to use for minutes. Are you good with taking minutes for us tonight? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. I don't think we're going to need a timekeeper, so I'm not going to worry about that. All right. So I know, Isla, I think you're here for public comment, and this is the public comment period. Were you going to be joined by anyone else, or are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready to dive in. Sadie was coming. If you see her, Sadie Brightman, if you see her in
Okay.
the waiting room, we could pop her in.
Okay.
But I know
Yep.
she's in town with kids and sports.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Isla Halby, and I know many of you. I'm a mom of three, and I've been an occupational therapist in the district. So know and love the community and just appreciate all your work. And I also run Xena Mountain Farm. So community and community engagement is my absolute passion. And, you know, oh, sorry, there was some. And so I just really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to get to speak to the committee and to the public. I wanted to speak tonight about the policy that was written in May of 2023 about the change in structure for the children to participate in the musical theater productions at Mount Abe. And this was saying that now, starting in May 2023, there was no longer anyone that was out of district could participate. And so I completely understand this policy on paper, but I did want to communicate to the committee and to the public about what this looked like in actuality for the kids this fall, as it was a change. And the big change being, of course, that Lincoln is no longer in the district. So any unenrolled Lincoln middle schoolers, which the vast majority of the Lincoln middle schoolers and high schools are all attending Mount Abe, but any unenrolled Lincoln middle schoolers were not allowed to participate. And I understand completely that with the new structures, that there's a lot of different financial structures that are going to be around the musical and around all the things that the districts are handling. But I don't see that has to have a different community structure. And I feel like that this is the place in the group of people in the committee that is safekeeping that community and is holding that strong thread of community. So knowing that it's all new and that we need time to figure out what financial structures might support the strongest thread of community for both districts and for all kids in our town, that's understandable. But that there isn't a need to kind of break the thread of community if we can have creative solutions around the financial structures that are now different, which is understandable. What happened this year is just there was four students that were middle schoolers unenrolled that were not allowed to participate, which is a very small number. Two had participated the year before. So again, that's a break in the chain of, what the community that we've been building until the split with the school, and then the new policy. And then one student is a new seventh grader who was hoping to work in the tech. And then the fourth student was a student that is a sibling. So her older sister is enrolled in the play and enrolled at Mount Abe, and then she's enrolled at North Branch. So her sister is allowed to participate in the play, but she is not allowed to participate in the play. So it's this small group of kids that is, in our opinion, we're having a break in community by this policy, and would just wanted to hope that the board may review the policy, review what went into the policy, review any financial structures that could support a strong thread of community that could be a creative solution to, if there is space and if the students within the district had first priority for attendance, if there was space, that there would be some sort of creative solution to keep these kids that all are funneling to Mount Abe as soon as they hit ninth grade. All the students want to go to Mount Abe, that they wouldn't have this break and this lapse. Also to be noted, there was some great creative solutions that enabled these kids that go to other middle schools to participate in sports. And there was creative solutions around that. And that the board may look to creative solutions to keep this strong thread of community with the performing arts, which can be life-changing for middle school students that are learning about themselves and the world, and a chance to share their talents. And that's all. I really appreciate your time and all your work with the community engagement all throughout, 2022 and all those meetings that we went. Very impactful, your work in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Isla. I realize I don't know if this group, which is made up of board members and also community members, is all up to speed on how we typically handle public comment. I know some folks have been at our meetings, our full board meetings for public comment, but just to remind everyone that we're capturing those comments in minutes, and if there's any request for specific action, then or additional information, then we will try to get that back to the person who's requesting it after the meeting. But we're typically really just listening. This is the chance for a community to share with us, and we're just kind of listening and holding that space. So we're not really responding to it at this time.
Right. And I will submit to Krista. I'll just submit a short written thing all through email to Krista after the meeting. And
then, I think we lost Sadie. So I don't know if she was going to share her thoughts, but
she was planning to. Did she lose service?
Oh, wait, here she comes. Hey, Sadie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
There you are. You look like you might be in a car, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
So I don't know if we lost you there.
I'm right in Bristol.
Okay. So anyway, if you'd like to share anything, go ahead. I was just kind of telling the committee members how we typically deal with public comment, but feel free to go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I just would love to echo Isla's comments and just speak from personal experience as well about the very same issue that we're looking at with the change in policy regarding the extracurricular participation in the fall musical and in the musical theater program in general. And yeah, I just really wholeheartedly agree with how Isla presented it and have a similar spirit of community and continuity where I'm looking at in my own, just like in my own anecdotal experience with one child who was successfully able to participate in this program and attend an area private middle school and then attend Mount Abe, and the impact that had for her as kind of like as a bridge experience, and again a feeling of connection with Mount Abe for when she started was really powerful. And so we're just basically wanting to add nuance and a personal story for what we hope can be just a continuing conversation to look at how can this program kind of serve the community in general, and then how can we have this program even encourage some of these kids to enroll in Mount Abe because of the positive experience and the inclusivity that the program allows kids to partake in. So I think that's it. I think I really appreciate the forum and the opportunity to share, and look forward to participating in the conversation if we can keep a look at how the policy affects individual kids and families, and especially with the intentions of joining the Mount Abe community and becoming with the investment in those kids along the way, and then to join the community fully. So thank you so much.
And one other thing, I don't know if it was made clear, but I think the Lincoln, the kids, unenrolled kids there, we would be happy to tuition in. I know there's no current structure for that or current amount, or there would need to be research done, but that would be in the review process, that the Lincoln School District could tuition in an extracurricular per kid, and it could even potentially be a revenue stream for the musical for its amazing work that it does. Be willing to have from the district perspective or from a parents group, to help support the kids. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for being here. And Sadie, I had mentioned to Isla that if she wanted to share her comments directly to the board, then we can pass those on as well, and they are captured in the minutes. So appreciate you both being here.
Thank you for all your work. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you all.
Take care. Okay, I don't think we have any other folks here for public comment. Oh, Nancy, go ahead.
No, I just have a question about what the policy is that these folks were talking about. So tell me if I understand correctly, if a student who lives in Lincoln doesn't go to Mount Abraham Middle School or high school, that student isn't able to participate, as things are right now, isn't able to participate in any extracurricular activity, sports or arts performances or anything like that. Is that correct? But a Lincoln student who is tuitioned to Mount Abraham can participate in extracurricular activities and plays and so forth. Do I have that right?
Yes, I think there is some clarity around whether kids that are not in the district can participate. There are these, I'm sorry, it's sort of a newer look at this policy since Lincoln became its own school district. So it's kind of new to all of us, and I can share you with you after the meeting, the actual language in the policy. But there is often an agreement that's developed between school districts when there is, say, a program is offered in Middlebury, hockey, for example, that's not offered at Mount Abe. And on a yearly basis, there's an agreement through the VPA, I believe, that Vermont Principals Association, where schools, it has a name that I'm not remembering. Maybe Beth knows what the name is. But anyway, there's a name for that agreement. And if there's space on an annual basis, that can be revisited. And I believe that that's what allowed students from Lincoln who were not enrolled in the middle school to still participate in middle school sports. But that did not happen for the musical. And I'm assuming it's because we had such huge numbers. I think there are like over 100 students currently participating. So I think that's the crux of the policy. And I think it was always that way, but maybe not as articulated or as known until this year. So, yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there might be a possibility for some creative solutions. Yes?
You know, we haven't had a chance to talk much about it because it happened pretty quickly at the start of the year. But
sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Okay, I think everybody else here is for the meeting, so I'm assuming there's no other general public comment. So we're going to move on to approving minutes from our last meeting on September 12th. And if I could get a board member to make that motion, please. Hang on, I've just got to turn my, do you need to come in? I just have to turn my camera off for a second since I'm using my daughter's room, but I'm still here. Okay, go ahead. So can I get a board member to make a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll make the motion, Barb.
Great. And
to approve the minutes.
Great. And I think because we're a small committee, we don't need a second. So all those in favor of, or is there any discussion about the minutes? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Minutes are approved. All right. So we're going to spend the first part of our meeting talking about where we're at with our community engagement around equity and inclusion. And then for the second half of our meeting, we'll take a little bit of time talking about some engagement that's going to be happening around the budget and what our role might be in that work. So just to recap for folks, we last time talked about what next steps we might take, having gathered some great info from the Listen Up survey and the 2 community surveys. And what do we do with that in terms of continuing to bring forward really important conversations and dialogue with folks about what students need to feel a sense of belonging and to have the tools they need to succeed. And in the spirit of our ENDS policy, which includes language around ensuring all students will have equitable access to those opportunities. So we had great conversation and a bunch of different things that folks were going to look into. And I thought it would be good to just kind of see where we're at with some of those things and then maybe talk about what else we're thinking about and next steps. So, how does that sound to people as far as how we should spend the first part of our time together? Okay, great. Okay, so Jennifer, can you just share with us a little bit about the email you sent out? I know I saw it, but I'm not sure if others know that it went out, or if you could just tell us a little bit about that and any responses that you got.
Yeah, sure. Elisa and Deb and I worked together on a letter to kind of follow up with the Listen Up people who came. There were 30 people that we emailed, and one phone call went out because they only provided the phone message. And I made 2 kind of contact lists, and I used my Gmail because I wasn't quite sure how I should do it, but I have them there for the future. I could include everybody else, but I didn't want to do any weird privacy problems. So I CC'd or included Krista on it. And I could read the letter if people want to hear it. But basically we, acknowledged some time had passed. We expressed gratitude for people coming. We listed the top 3. Let me just go to the letter. I can't look at it and look at the thing at the same time. Which were 34 people had listed systemic racism as an area of concern. 36 people talked about mental health challenges, and social media and substance abuse were 21. So those were kind of the top ones that we saw in the information that we looked at. And then we invited people to come tonight. We included the Zoom link. And then we also said we would be following up with listening circles or next things that we would be working on. I got 2, let me come back to Zoom. I had 2 people respond. Pat Sharp, who is away, but she said that she'd be interested in coming next time. And Sally Jenkin-Roth. And she said that she had COVID right now. So I don't know if maybe another time she was just traveling and had COVID. So maybe she would come. And we thought maybe we would start with the email, but then maybe try to reach out by phone to the larger list before the next meeting, just to see if we could talk to people and sort of see where people are at with, how involved they would like to be. So I'll just pause there.
Great. Yeah, what I really liked about the note you drafted, or the note you sent, it was just really welcoming and appreciative of folks' time, and acknowledging that time had gone by, and then an invitation to still be part of the conversation. I thought that was really lovely. So thank you for that. And sometimes I get in like business, mode, and I forget that that is a really nice thing to do for folks when you're reaching out to them, is to acknowledge their time and gratitude for that. And I think too, even if folks are not able to be part of this smaller planning group, that's a great group that we can continue to reach out to as we're hosting different conversations, or to even let know about other things that are going on that might be of interest. So having a almost like a mailing list of people like that, I think is really helpful. And I think some of the other tasks focus on how to connect with students and with staff, but that greater community connection is still and definitely very important. So whatever we do, we're going to want those folks to know about it. And so continuing to loop them in, especially after that really nice invitation, will hopefully keep people engaged and tuned in. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I'll say Elisa did most of the writing of the actual letter.
Oh, well, that was great.
Added things in, and so yeah. So just let me know too in the future of like what's best for how to send things out. Who wants to be? Should I put everybody here on that those two contact lists or how you want to do it together.
Yeah,
I don't want to, I just was like, I want to get it out.
yeah, which I think is great. And I'm happy to be the, then just share it with the whole group too.
Okay. That's
Yeah, I
great.
can do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could we shoot? I just not am not seeing it at this moment. Could you shoot me a copy of it and I could link it into the agenda?
Oh, for the minutes, you mean?
That makes for the
That would be
minutes.
great.
Or,
Can you forward to Liz, Jennifer, the copy that went out?
thank you. Sorry.
Can you put your email in the chat and then I'll just copy and paste it and forward it out to you. Thank you.
Okay, so the next group that we wanted to connect with, and I guess I wanted to back up and just say that I'm not sure how it will take shape with how we connect with the community. The way I was imagining this was, and there can be lots of different ways we connect with the community, but the way I was imagining this was that what we're looking to do is really continue to invite people in to have these hard conversations in a way that invites participation and sharing back the data we've already collected can be a really useful part of those first conversations we've had with people to say, we did these surveys and we gathered this information, and for that to be part of a in-person conversation with folks around, what do you think about this? What reactions do you have? What's missing? So when Liz and I got together and we're talking about how might we connect with students to know what's important to them, that was the context that we started with, was what if we first, and I think we talked about this at our meeting with this full group as well, but it'd be great to get a sense from them, because we know that the students that completed the survey are a small group of the whole, and a survey is a moment in time, but wouldn't it be great to, as a way to at least start a conversation with students, to share with them what their peers shared with us and to get their reactions. This is what we heard when we did the survey. What resonates with you? What do you think's missing? The ultimate goal is to really hear from students what they might like to see in the future. But I think having first that opportunity to reflect back to them, and again, express gratitude for whatever thoughts they've already shared, can be a really nice way to connect. And so Liz and I brainstormed about, knowing, I think for both of us, we have high schoolers, and middle schoolers, and we know how busy they are and how hard it is to capture their time and attention. So thinking about what groups already exist and are already meeting, and could we insert ourselves into their spaces if the leaders of those groups would be open to that. And so we reached out to the community council, which is represented by students from 7th through 12th grade and is the governing body for the school as far as hearing student proposals and dealing with student privileges and all kinds of different student voice priorities. And so we thought about this community council. We also thought about this newly formed Eagle leadership group. And we also thought about class officers as groups that we knew already existed, that had faculty advisors that we could maybe approach and say, hey, when do you normally meet? And could we maybe join one of your meetings and share with the students, we did this survey and we'd like to just have some time to talk with you about it. And so gratefully, all of the folks that we reached out to were really happy to have us come, and pretty much just said, yeah, let us know when you'd like to do it and we'll make sure students are available. So I thought that was great. And our next task, part of our next to-dos, is going to be to think about, okay, what do we actually want to do with that time with them? Like, what's the best way to have a structured conversation where we're going to get some good input and feedback. So that's part of this group brainstorming next is to figure that out. But regardless, I think that we can find a space and a way. And I really hope that folks that have flexible schedules might be able to be part of that, to kind of, even if you're able to just go to one of those conversations, to just sort of listen and hear from the kids themselves, because they're really mostly pretty cool kids. And it's just so nice to get inside the walls and kind of get the vibe of what's actually happening for them and what's important to them, instead of us adults just assuming what we think they might want to talk about. So anyway, I think that outreach is available to us, and our task is to figure out, when and what will it look like. And then I'll just keep yammering since I'm on the next one too. Or sorry, let me pause. Liz, anything else that you want to add to that?
I think you covered it really well. So I do hope when we know when we're going to be invited and what those times are, that we'll just share it with the whole group, and whoever can come would be great.
Yep.
And some of them, like community council, I know they're working on the Zoom, right? So maybe you could they take Zoom up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to be a fly on the wall. Hang on, I'm just going to turn the light on because I feel like it's getting dark in here. Hang on. Okay, there we go. So on that same thread, I reached out to the two co-presidents of the Teachers Association, similarly just wanting to know from them. Well, really my ask for them was, we'd love to hear what you think about what kids need to really feel a sense of belonging. We know there are things already happening in the district. Love to know what your thoughts are about the results of these surveys that we conducted. Similar feedback, but what I really wanted to know from the two people I reached out to was, like, what's the best way to find time with teachers? I kept like what we would talk about with them still vague, and I explained we weren't sure exactly what it was going to look like yet, but what, again, super busy people with a lot going on. And so they both had the suggestion that if we could attend a staff meeting that was already scheduled, that would be amazing. So that's an ask that when we figure out a little more clearly what we want to do, that we will make that recommendation to the full board for their approval. And I think that's something we can ask if we can have some help with, or if that's an option, is to have, I'm guessing, and I don't know for sure, but I think professional development and meetings, oftentimes agendas for those are planned out pretty far in advance. But if there's a way to use some space that's already dedicated for people on their calendars to capture them for a conversation, that would be lovely. And so they seem really happy to have the opportunity, and look forward to hearing back from us. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Deb.
Yeah, I have. Thank you as well. I think that's a great first step. My thought is, when we get this opportunity to perhaps present at a faculty meeting, if we could be intentional about giving the teachers a heads up of what we're going to say, so they can kind of have it percolate down, so their responses either at the meeting, or because if you hand them a sheet for responses, some of them will fill it out right there. So if they have a chance ahead of time to give some thought to the issue, that might be something we could think about.
Nancy, thanks, Deb.
This is something I've said before, but I do want to say it again. I think especially whenever we're going to be talking with people who work with kids in our schools, it's going to be really about these issues. it's going to be really important that we walk in pretty informed about what's already happening in the schools to work on this. And so I'm still hoping that we can become more informed. Maybe that's happened and I have missed it, but I don't feel like I'm very informed about the efforts that are being made in the schools around, especially dealing with racism. And I would want to know that before we come in with our ideas from the outside, because I just think if we can, first of all, understand what's already happening in the schools, and assuming there's cause for applause about it, provide it, give people some encouragement and kudos about that, because it's not it's not easy stuff to talk with kids about. And at the end of the day, it's the people who work with kids in our schools who have the relationships that are going to enable the conversations that need to happen frequently and deeply. So that would be my request before we meet with any teachers or administrators about this. I know Beth is here and she has some insight about what has been going on, certainly at Mount Abraham, and maybe beyond. But she'll be a great resource to us in that regard, I would think.
Yeah, I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Beth.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm brand new here, so I'm learning. But there is a need for public voice too. What people are wanting, and I think a lot of people don't realize what is happening in the classrooms. So we need to be more transparent about that, clearly. Because even as a district, director, I'm really not quite sure what's happening in the high school some days, Yeah,
I really appreciate that sentiment, Nancy, and I maybe want to be more clear that what, at least for me, and the way that I've seen this roll out in other school systems that I've had the chance to work with, is that this is really a listening session. This is really first a listening session of sort of saying to people, we did this survey. What are reactions to it? What do you think about these issues? What's happening right now in the schools that you want to share with us, that you want to celebrate? What do you feel like is missing? So it's really not at all coming in and saying, we think you need to do X, Y, and Z, because that will not go anywhere. And it is hard, because these issues are so important and overdue for being addressed everywhere. And yet it can be really easy to shut doors with folks in terms of their openness or their capacity or their ability to do anything. So it's really important to listen and to have that context. So yeah, I think that means it's a slow and deliberate process, but it's got to be that way, that we're first like seeking information, and not going in to present or to, data dump or anything like that. It's more just, hey, the survey results are kind of a way to get some initial reflection and then just really hear from folks. What do you think about all this? How's it going? Where are there areas where you think we are doing really well? Where are there areas where you feel like there's growth needed? I also should say that it isn't really, this group's role is really to just hold that information and then pass it on. It's not really our role to do anything with it, but we're just like the conveyor of, if we're doing it right, the community engagement committee's job is really to just provide a good space for getting good input. And how do we do that? I think for sure, Nancy, it's first seeking to understand. So, and it looks different when we're talking to students and when we're talking to staff members and when we're out in the community. And also it looks really different who you're talking to in the community. which staff members you're talking to, which student groups. So I think it's really important that we develop a conversation with folks that has some good ways of fostering dialogue, at least at this stage in the game.
That makes sense to me. It also makes me think about the question of whether that kind of conversation, I could see it at a staff meeting. I can also see it possibly at an administrative leadership team meeting.
Yep. Either and both. Yeah. And I think, it will be something to talk about. I think it'll be important for the board to think about, for this group to think about, for our administrators to think about who are the right people to facilitate some of those conversations. Because they can lead to hard conversations, and we want to make sure people are comfortable with having them. But I think that, folks in all levels of the organization, it would be really great to hear their input on this work and on what's going well and on what are the barriers to moving it forward. I'm guessing pretty much everyone in our school district wants us to be an anti-racist school, but what are the barriers, right? So anyway, Other thoughts about all that?
I'll just say one possible resource for a facilitator that I know who does this work. This is her life work. I get regular coaching from her on my own anti-racism work. Her name is Milta Vega Cardona, and I've been talking to her some about this process here with the committee, and she is available as a consultant. This would not be a free consultant. This is what her work, but I would, she was a trainer with the People's Institute that we presented to the school board. Now she's working with the Center for White American Culture specifically, and she has her own practice. So just if even in a pilot part or part of what we're talking about, she would be a good person to work with. And I know it's hard to find people. So anyway.
Thank you. Any other people have any other reactions? Barb?
I'm going back to what you said about going to all parts of the organization, and I wonder if once we get rolling, it might be valuable to include staff like people in the kitchen, people who do the custodial work, anyone who has any interaction with the students, and include them.
Yep.
Okay.
Great point. Anyone else? Okay. Beth, do you want to share a little bit about, I think we had a question about doing the Listen Up assembly specifically, but maybe it was more broad than that. People can help me remember.
Yeah, I reached out to Shannon, the Mount Abe principal, and there is a schedule of assemblies. They happen monthly, one for middle school and one for high school. But she said additional assemblies can be scheduled, so it's pretty wide open.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did not, I don't know if advisory was on my list, but advisories is another great way. Middle school and high school students meet every morning. They do have a curriculum they follow, but they also talk about many other topics. So I think that would be a great access point for us too. And the groups are, I don't know how they're grouped, but they all have one teacher in a small space
Mhm.
throughout the buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're by class year. So you get assigned an advisor they change after you go from middle school to high school. But then
Right.
you get an advisor assigned as a ninth grader, and you have that same advisor through your senior year. So
Gotcha.
theoretically, they're developing a really nice, consistent relationship over the 4 years.
Right. Right.
They are small, which could be great for discussion groups if we want to do that. It's it's definitely more work to try to integrate a message or get it across or pull information in that way.
The one thing I remember, there were some advisory circles that were done around hanging the Black Lives Matter flag, and some conversations around that. It might be interesting to see what feedback folks on, like the advisors themselves, had on the prompts they had, or how. I think what often happens, well, I don't want to make assumptions without getting more information, but I think what sometimes happens is you have a prompt that you get as an advisor, and then students will respond to that, and it generates discussion. And so it would be interesting to hear if there was any feedback about how that structure worked for that pretty weighty topic, and maybe if there's any learning from that we could think about for this topic. Okay. And Bailey is not here, but we already touched on advisory circles. So I think what I would love is if we can bring to the board for our end of October meeting a recommendation of how what our next steps will be as far as continuing to dig deeper and get more input from our stakeholders around this idea of what does equity and inclusion look like? What does belonging look like? We have identified different ways to reach out to groups, but we need to figure out a little more specifically what those different conversations could look like. I have had some experience building similar conversations with other school districts, and also with this school district when we did in the fall of 2019, when we began to talk about declining enrollment and potential school consolidation. I know Nancy participated in some of those conversations and that work, and that sort of structure I think can work really well, where you're sharing information, asking people to react to it, gathering their thoughts and ideas, and then letting people know what's going to happen with what they're sharing with you. What's the accountability for what they're sharing with you? But it would be helpful, I think, for the board in terms of giving the thumbs up, yeah, go for it, to get a sense of a little more concrete of a plan of what this could look like. And so I'm wondering if there's any folks here that would be interested in playing around with some possible discussion guides, one for students, one for the community, and one for staff, that we could share with the board for feedback and hopefully approval. And then we could begin thinking about how to get these on the calendar and who might want to participate in these different conversations, or who might want to help co-facilitate. So if you're interested in being a part of shaping the actual conversations, we can maybe set up a time separate from this to work through an actual outline of an agenda, or a discussion guide, I should say, because it's really not a meeting, it's a discussion, it's a conversation. Jennifer?
I'd be interested in being part of that conversation.
Great. Thank you. Barb? Awesome.
Yeah, I'd be interested as well.
Okay. And Erin?
Yep.
Great. So, and Elisa, thank you. So it's October 3rd. Oh, I see you too, Deb.
It's up there too.
So it's October 3rd now, and our board meeting is on October 24th. So maybe what we can do is, does this day and time generally work for the folks that said they'd be able to, day of the week and time of day? And Erin's saying, what I was going to propose, I mean, we could do an offline, try to schedule a time that works for everybody, but since we're all here, I'm wondering if we can figure it out now and just get it on our calendars. So if not, is there another day at this time, Erin, that works, or in a similar, like even 7? I don't know what other alternatives folks would have.
Yeah, Tuesdays are hard for me. Other days are better.
Okay.
And a little bit later might be better too, because we have soccer like every night.
Yes, the shuttling, and then who's going to get dinner and
exactly.
Yep, I know that routine. What about next Wednesday, the 11th at 7 o'clock? Would that work for folks that raise their hands?
I can't do next Wednesday. I could do the 18th Wednesday. That's a possibility for folks.
That might be well, that could work. I was going to say it's a little close to the next board meeting, but I think even if we can't, it would be great to get whatever we're proposing to the board with enough time to look at it before the meeting. But if we are meeting on the 18th and we commit to getting it done,
we'd be fresh.
We'd be fresh. Yeah. Does that work for you, Erin, and for Elisa and Deb? You can bump in if you need to. Yeah. Okay. So let's say the 18th at 11. The 18th at 7, not 11. What I will do before then is try to mock up a guide based on some other things I've done before that I think have worked pretty well, and we can use that as a starting point. What I think would be also great is after we meet and before we share with the board, I'd really love us to be able to share back out with this group for any other feedback or things we might have missed. I think that would be really helpful. Okay. I also want to recognize that we've been talking about a lot of different things that we want to see to lift up and move forward. This is just a piece of it. From my perspective on the board, I think it's a really important piece. I think there's a lot of really useful input we can get from folks to help advance some of the other things we want to do. But I recognize that it's only one piece, so it's an ongoing conversation. To that end, I also will continue to share other things that I'm hearing about that I know are happening in the education community. So you might have seen, and thank you, Nancy, for sharing. Did you share that with everybody? Reply all. Okay, so I had sent folks something, and you may not have had a chance to see it yet, about the education quality standards there were proposed updates to make them more inclusive and culturally relevant. It's really exciting. And then there's that pretty laborious process that has to be undertaken by the State Board of Ed to approve those. And then schools are charged with implementing those. And so tonight they have testimony. There'll be other opportunities. You can call in. I've done it myself before, where you can call in and just share your support for whatever it is that they happen to be discussing that evening. In this case tonight, it was this education quality standards updates. But I think I may not have shared the most recent version of what they're reviewing. And so Nancy had shared that with me, which I really appreciate.
Was that the most recent version that I?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't open it. I just saw that you sent it.
Okay, you should take a look, because that what I sent was what I found was something from April 22, and I thought it may not be the most recent.
Oh, okay. All right.
But my what I was saying to Krista online was on email was what she sent to us was a slideshow about what's being proposed as far as changes to the education quality standards. But what I was saying was it's really important to see the whole document with those proposed changes inserted, because then you get a sense of what the state is asking in total of public schools. I was also reading today that the state board, I think they've stuck to this. The state board is saying that private schools that receive public money won't be held to these new proposed standards, which really kind of frosted my cabbage, as we say. Anyway, so I think Krista's going to send to all of us the whole document that includes what's proposed, but also includes all the other things that are already in the school quality standards. And Krista, if you can find it, maybe it will be important for people to see how those guidelines are monitored.
Is that even a known yet?
Well, the education quality standards have been in existence for a long time. And
so in other words, that monitoring system, it's assumed would apply to whatever new updates they make. That makes sense.
But I just haven't kept up with how that's done now. So it'd be good for people to know that as well. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I shared that slide deck just to provide a little context, but essentially this all generated from an ethnic studies bill that really was trying to figure out ways to do what this group has talked about also, which is to really ensure that the way we deliver education, like curriculum and access and all the things are inclusive of all the different kinds of folks that go to our schools. So there's stuff in there about, students with disabilities and English as a second language learners and, all kinds of things. And I think I wanted to share it with folks here to say that, that at the state level, there's a recognition of the importance of that. And it has passed, and now they're ironing out the details. I think something maybe you alluded to, Nancy, is also really important, which is it is going to be the task of local schools to figure out how to implement that. And it will be no small task, I'm sure, as are all of these things that get passed on. And so,
and how to pay for it.
But, there are a lot of organizations that Education Justice Coalition being one that I think are really looking to support educators and school systems in how to do that. And they offer different workshops and opportunities. And so anyway, there's movement on that front that is exciting. So those sorts of things I will continue to share with this group. And one thing I also was wondering about, and might be something that we can ask Patrick Reen, our superintendent, about, is best ways to communicate out. There are a lot of things already happening that we don't necessarily need to do, but that we could let people know about, So in the recent social emotional learning newsletter that went out, that I think I shared with you to all district employees, there was a link to the Bristol Social Justice Discussion Group. So there's a lot of things that people can tap into that already exist that that we could just maybe even figure out how to lift up. So.
Krista, was it the Bristol Social Justice Group that you mentioned just before in what you were saying, or was there another social justice group? I sort of missed the first part of what you said.
Yeah. So in the social emotional learning newsletter, they put a link to the Porter Knights discussion that
Okay.
she has built. But then before that, I was saying that that there's an organization called the Education Justice Coalition that is really focused around supporting school systems and staff and students in ensuring our schools are equitable and just spaces. So they're a really good resource.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing that I want to let this group know about is our upcoming budget planning. So, you know, I was saying before, I think if we're doing our job well as a community engagement committee, we're creating opportunities that are well structured so we can both inform our community about what's happening and also get input on things that we're seeking input on. And our budget, you know, there aren't very many levers where we can have much say over what happens, because there are a lot of things that we're mandated to do and that we have to pay for. But there are places, and we, you know, as a board, we expect that the budget is going to fund the resources needed to achieve our ends policy. But we like to provide opportunities, not just to inform the community about what's already been put forth and is going to be on the ballot for them to vote about, but also prior to that budget being finalized, to share with them what opportunities there are for input into some of those places where there is an opportunity to prioritize resources or you know, raise up certain efforts, for example. So depending on how much we've had going on in the past, sometimes we've done this well, and sometimes we haven't had as much chance to do it well. But a couple of years ago, we had some great conversations in October with community as part of the budget building process. We're hoping to do something similar this year. And we have now a finance committee, which is really exciting. And they are meeting next Tuesday as a committee to talk about what that input could look like, or what that community engagement could look like. And what I'm hoping is that this group can help get the word out once they've landed on that, and maybe participate and, you know, join the conversation, both learning more about how we build our budgets, what are the current constraints, what are the drivers that are dictating the direction of them, and then what's important to our stakeholders that we want district leaders to keep in mind as they're deciding where to put the dollars and cents. Nancy, did you?
Well,
Sorry, I thought you were starting to say something.
Well, this is great, is what I would say. And I would also say that I think it's great that the board has formed a finance committee. That's a great move. And I think that having in the last couple of years been very close to looking at the budgeting for our schools, one of the big questions that I think would be on my mind and the minds of many others has to do with what assumptions are going to be the basis for the budgeting, and what is the range of options with. I mean, one can assume this, or one can assume that, or anything in between on a whole host of subtopics. And I'll be very curious to get that information and hear about what assumptions are being considered.
That's helpful. Are there other, just, you know, especially the folks that aren't on the board, if you think about like what would you want to know about as far as I mean, I'm going to try to connect with the chair of the finance committee before their committee meeting to see how we can support their conversation about this. But if there's any feedback folks have that I could share with them on, if you were going to go to a meeting to learn more about the budget and share your thoughts, like what would you want to know? And that is helpful feedback from you, Nancy. But anybody have any other feedback I can pass on?
Well, I would definitely like to know how it's going to affect the curriculum, big changes that are going to be made, like they did with the middle school this year. What kind of scheduling changes, what kind of, are they going to cut AP classes in the future? That kind of curriculum changes.
If I could also add, I always hope that any presentation about the budget can begin with some detail about what are the goals of this budget in terms of what we're trying to do for kids. Mm-hmm. Rather than starting with the dollars and cents and keeping taxes down and all of that. I mean, I'd like to hear more about the aspirational part of budgeting. For the kids.
Great. Elisa?
Yeah, Nancy, I agree with what you just said. Like, it's very difficult as somebody not on the board and somebody not particularly good at budget creation of that size, and somebody who, quite frankly, gets frustrated by that whole process of budgeting in this regard. What kind of money trickles down to the students? Like what proportion of the budget actually benefits the students and their learning, and their safety in the school? Like, will there be in the budget dollars allowed for training teachers how to teach anti-racism in the classroom? Will there be in the budget dollars for trauma specialists who has background and experience in handling racial trauma within the school? Like what part of the budget gives dollars toward that kind of need?
Thank you.
Yeah, I had one question too that I wonder, and I think I know, but I just want to make sure. When you say stakeholders, you mean community, right? The people in the community. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for myself. So I guess one question I would have too is about equity, and how as that planning is happening, what kind of sort of inventory of itself of how that's, how equity is happening within where that money is going towards. I hope that makes sense, but like, how does that group take inventory of itself and see how and where resources are going, and from an equity perspective lens, I guess.
Thanks, Jennifer. Beth, your hand was up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, a large portion of our budget is staffing. And this summer, I attended the Vermont Principals Association in Killington. And one of the workshops was about, bringing diversity into our schools. And how do we do that? By teachers, right? And that we really need to broaden our recruitment, and as are we willing to allot money through our budget to recruiting teachers of minority? And how do we do it? I learned that you really need to reach out 6 hours beyond where you live, like a much bigger radius than School Spring. That is all we really use. You know, Boston, New York, Montreal, Plattsburgh, I don't know, all the big cities around us. But, you know, and I've been talking to we've been talking quite a bit about that. Like, we really need to start recruiting and being intentional about who we hire. It's really hard, and especially what I do, special education. But, you know, I think I think right now is a really good time for Vermont to bring people here. You know, and the big barrier is housing, but people, man, I mean, it happens. We're getting people. So that would be my question is, you know, what is a priority as far as hiring? Because what we're getting is not necessarily what is best for students sometimes. And we need to broaden that. And I don't mean we don't have great teachers. I didn't mean that at all.
No,
we just need more diversity.
I'm just curious, did anyone throw out a budget figure for what a really diverse and strong recruitment strategy might cost? Like, do we have any benchmarks of what? Yeah, be curious.
No, I don't think it's a lot. Recruitment happens. We haven't done it because we haven't had to. Is you know, for one English teaching position in the middle school, we used to get 150 applicants. Now we get 2. And so, yeah, recruitment's not expensive. It really isn't. And advertising isn't either. I just think we have to invest in that and commit to it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm just thinking about it really is really hard that we are having a hard time finding people, but it sounds like it could also be an opportunity to be more deliberate about how we find people. So Nancy and then Elisa.
Another piece that I'm very curious about in relation to the budget is, you know, the board commissioned Nate Levinson to do a very detailed study about our budgeting practices and ways to budget and be more cost effective and so forth. And I'm very curious about and that included a different way to portray the budget that would be clearer for everyone, I think. And I'll be very curious about the degree to which that study, which cost about $75,000 to complete, has been used and will be used in the budgeting for the coming year. It was a very thorough and helpful study, I thought.
Yeah. Thanks, Nancy. Elisa?
So I wanted to thank Beth for her question around reaching out to a more diverse skin color group of people and cultural group of people for teachers. And I applaud that. And at the same time, I would want to make sure that the finance committee and the board are also taking some really thoughtful, introspective consideration of the reasons for hiring. Because it feels really good, like we're doing the right thing to do to hire teachers of color, Black teachers, Hispanic teachers, whatever, ethnicity teachers. I personally love that. I can't wait till that happens. But as we've seen lately, that it frequently in Vermont leads to very fast resignations, because once you convince a family to move here, a teacher to move here, and he's got Black skin, she's got Black skin, there's going to be repercussions that need, unfortunately, we've lost almost as many really good teachers of color in Vermont, or principals of color, or superintendents of color. We've lost them because we weren't ready in our own selves to provide for them the kind of or to help remove the barriers we have within our own self and with our own structures, with our own boards, with our own, we haven't developed our muscle yet of how do we have teachers of color and show them that we're doing our own work in anti-racism to the point where they feel safe and included and willing to stay the course. And so I just, like, it's easy for me to want to throw that out there. Oh, yay, let's get those teachers of color. But until we as a community, till the board, there has to be a living, embodied anti-racist culture already beginning, in order to create a safe space in which a Black teacher would be comfortable at MATABE. If our Black students at MATABE are already running for the hills, getting a Black teacher is going to be like a Band-Aid to something that seems like the right thing to do, but I'm not sure we're ready for it. And so maybe the preparation, like, how do we do that? How do we educate ourselves? How do we learn what it means to have people of color on the staff, and so that they don't get here and 6 months later go, I'm out of here because you weren't ready for me. So I'm not sure how to make that happen, but I know in my heart that it's something that needs to happen. Thanks, Beth, though. I agree. I want it to. I really, really do.
And that, that reminds me, the hiring is probably the easiest part, right? It's the sustainability and having these people stay in our community, the retention. Yeah. And that's where, again, are we willing to, I don't know how much the monetary value, but what are we willing to do? How are we going to do that? But yeah, that's really profound, Alyssa. Thank you.
And I guess that it's back to, for the finance committee, money for teacher training to create an atmosphere that is accepting, and not only accepting, is supportive and knows why they're supporting. It has some background for that stance. So you could really just say it's community building, but around with a racist lens, anti-racist lens, excuse me. But yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Deb. Barb, I think you had your hand up. Do you want to go ahead? And then Jennifer.
Okay, I was just thinking that I think this really jigsaws well with the informational meetings that we're going to have, and it may be maybe some of what we receive as information at these meetings will be very helpful to the recruiting process. That it just seems like a continuum of information that informs what the next steps are. And we may be further along than we think we are, or very far behind of where we think we are. But I think the students may be craving having lots of diverse teachers, and we may hear that from the student body. But we should really be aware to what we hear. I know we will be, but that may inform it. So.
Thanks, Barb. Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you. Everybody's comments, and just thinking, and I sort of said this to Liz when I sent off Milta's information, but there is, something we could consider, and whether the board has, whether there is money maybe already thought about for this, but some sort of equity audit of how we're doing things and where we could be doing better, where we're doing well, what's happening to kind of start to build that culture of support that, as we, it's like, I think, yeah, it's hard to, you don't want to put the cart before the horse kind of thing. But, something like that might give some clues to where we're at. And Milta, who I mentioned before, does those kinds of things for institutions and schools. So that could be in the wording of that and the timeliness of, because I think a lot of people are understanding more about equity and what that really means. So just, wondering if money's been thought about towards, again, it's sort of the same kind of thing I said before, of inventory of what's already happening and how to do better, or, how to grow. Maybe growing is a good way.
Lisa, was your hand up from before, or did you have another comment?
It was. I took it down. I guess my imagination is, blooming off the page as we speak. And I'm just, it would be great if there were room in the budget for a couple of pilot programs of teaching anti-racist education, like a pilot curriculum. Could we do a pilot curriculum of one group of juniors and seniors together, either, through some outside teacher kind of thing? I'm not exactly sure, but could there be a pilot program that we could run to see how it goes, to give it a shot, to give it a try? What would that cost? Don't know.
Thank you. Great. I've got some notes here with all of the thoughts people had. And if other thoughts come to mind about what you yourself, or what you think other people you are in contact with regularly might want to know about our budget, or share about what they hope to see in our budget, feel free to send that to me so I can share that with Mike, who's chairing the finance committee, as they think about how to structure this conversation. And then I'm also going to ask if you all will help spread the word about the conversation when it's scheduled. I think that they're probably going to have it at the same, when their normal committee meeting is, about in November, but I'm not positive yet. But as soon as I know the details, I'll share it with you all and just ask that you help get the word out to folks.
I'd like to say, no, go ahead, Beth.
I listen to podcasts because I drive quite a ways to get to work. And I just had to share that this morning at one of my podcasts was about the power of librarians in our schools and how we underutilize their reach. Right. And I was just thinking, when you said the word audit inventory, I'm just curious, this is, again, my imagination's going, but how our libraries are stocked with information and books, digital and paper. But that's just something too that I'm curious, because librarians are a huge resource that apparently we're not tapping into in all of our schools, right? So that's just something to think about.
Yep.
Well, what I was going to say, I'm a retired teacher, and I don't know how the finance committee can address this, or even if this is something to say. I taught in New York, but teachers' salary were always the biggest ticket item, right? And teachers really got bashed because of that. And I don't know if there can be any understanding around the salaries that teachers are paid, being legitimate and respect for teachers, that whole thing. And I don't even know if that's what you're asking for, but that's a big issue, and it was always an emotional issue for me because teachers are really underpaid, and it's lots of dollars there. Anyway, I think you know where I'm going with that, so
I do, yeah.
that's all.
It seems like at different times there's been some bubbling up of that. But I feel like I haven't heard a lot of that sentiment in a while. Maybe I'm just Pollyanna, but and others might disagree. I don't know if one of the reasons is because I think so many of our schools are staffed by folks who live in the community as well. And there's like a closeness there to all. I don't know. But I think that's a really, it's unfortunate when that happens. That's like a scarcity mindset that, there's not enough for everyone, therefore you shouldn't get what you deserve. So yeah, but I don't see that as much.
That goes along with the whole teacher shortage as well. I mean, there's a huge teacher shortage, and part of that. Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking what you just said, Krista, too, is an example of inequity.
Mm-hmm. The scarcity mindset. Yeah. Nancy?
Krista, so when you're thinking about community engagement for the 24-25 budget, I think you're saying, and I just want to make sure I got it right, and I may not have for sure. I think you're saying that you're going to be talking to the chair of the finance committee about sort of a two-stage process where before the budget is built or even close to being set in stone, there'd be a way for community members to weigh in on what they see as the key priorities. And then after that, the budget, a draft is built that would show where those, hopefully would show there'd be an opportunity to show where that input appears in the draft, but then also an opportunity for people to respond to and ask questions about the draft before it's, while it's still in its early stages. Is that how you're seeing it?
I think so. What I'm not sure about timing wise is how many chances there will be for like major revision in that second part of what you said, I guess. So for sure, input and feedback at the beginning, and then sharing back out of what it's looking like before you vote is kind of the two steps to that process. But looking at it before you vote on it and asking questions about it, I'm not sure there'll also be a chance for additional reworking of it at that point. Am I answering your question?
Yeah.
It's a timing thing.
Right.
Like when, how many times can we get out to people before we have to warn it to be on the ballot, which is always, like a good bit of time before we vote on it. So
right, but I mean, it doesn't get warned until toward the end of January.
Right. Yeah. So there may be two opportunities. It might be more iterative than that. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate this conversation, all parts of it. And I think that's all that I have. So unless there's anything else, we don't usually do the meeting evaluation. I see that on our agenda. That's for the full board meetings. Are folks okay if I'm happy to evaluate our process or any other feedback anybody wants to share, but that format is specifically for full board meetings. Elisa.
And so I just have a question, Krista,
Yeah.
because I wanted to get clear. I think I heard maybe in the last meeting or I don't know, were we as a group going to try to hold a listening circle in November? Is that still the goal? Like, is there a...
Yeah, I mean, I think that that could be. So let's see. November might be ambitious.
That's what I was wondering.
November might be ambitious. It might have to be like, I want to make sure we have a really good plan and a really good dialogue structured. So that might mean it's like after the first of the year.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks
Okay.
for asking the question. Yeah. I appreciate that. And also the heads nodding, because sometimes I get really task oriented and want to just keep going, and I don't want the process to not be good because I'm feeling urgent. So, okay. Anything else? Great. Well, if you were thinking you were going to be here till 8, you just got 30 minutes back. So I hope you can enjoy it. I appreciate all of you. And I look forward to the smaller group connection on the 18th. And then we'll get back together again in November for our committee meeting.